So a number of you have requested for Dankest before to be the next weapon we review, so here we are. And let me just say, the way you guys talk up this pulse rifle, I was expecting Clever Dragon on roids. And if you don't know what that weapon was, it was literally the meta year 3 of Destiny 1, and it wrecked everything. Now, Dankest before is dropping from the Prophecy Dungeon. We had some fine gentlemen here that allowed us to play with their god rolls. So the rolls that we're bringing to you today, guys, are no mediocre rolls. They are the god rolls. I'm talking surplus, full auto, elemental capacitor, some slide shot rolls, high caliber rounds, the kind of things that should be making a rapid fire pulse rifle super nasty. Now, this is a weapon found in the energy slot. It does arc damage, which means if you encounter anyone using Dankest before in your lobby, just pull out a wrist runner. I'm serious. You'll be able to counter them easily, and they will literally swap off to another weapon. With that being said, though, let's talk about this gun, guys, because y'all like it. For some reason, y'all love this weapon. Y'all gave it 4.7 stars on Line GG. Whereas Grit Skipper has 4.4, which is not bad. Jurassic Green has only 3.2, and Time Worn Spire has 3.8. We will be doing side-by-side comparisons, so let's just start there. First up, yeah, Dankest before, in a lot of categories, is superior greatly to Jurassic Green, superior to that of Time Worn Spire, but don't kid yourself, Time Worn Spire, even though it has less range, actually has more because of zoom modifying scopes. Grit Skipper, though, yeah, that one really gives it a run for its money, which is where we're going to be making a lot of comparisons today, diving into these rolls. First up, we had this surplus full auto roll. Now, I wanted to try this out because normally in the past, I have always said I did not like full auto on any weapon because something about tap firing somehow brings about more accuracy for me. However, this is a 540 round per minute pulse rifle. It's shooting fast. And even if you tap, as fast as that finger could tap, I mean, you really start putting a lot of energy behind it. There are times that you're just not gonna reach that full 540 rounds per minute. And that makes a big difference. Anything less than the full max rate of fire, you start seeing drops there in your time to kill value. Now, luckily, rapid fires actually have one of the best TTK values in the game, or around one of the best at 0.8 seconds, which is what Dankest before is able to achieve at 7 crits to body. It's quite nice. And being 540 rounds per minute, especially when you combine it with perks like high caliber rounds, which I definitely recommend, you can put in some massive flinch on enemies. Full auto, even though it is a perk I don't ever recommend, it is one that I accept on this rapid fire pulse, simply because of just how fast it can fire, and there's something to be said about just laying on the trigger and letting it do the work for you. And I felt like I really noticed the benefits more on controller, because on controller, man, tapping back and forth while also maintaining thumb control on your joystick, there's a lot going on there, fellas, which is why just laying on the trigger was kind of nice. So for my controller players, I would actually lean into that more. And again, surplus is also really nice for a lot of things, because one of my biggest complaints about rapid fire pulse rifles was their handling speed being slow. And that's something that you don't want on a rapid fire weapon, right? You think rapid fire, you think of a weapon that's snappy, that's quick. That's not the case here. And the way Dankest before evaded that in the past is by having quick draw. And this one does have quick draw, but again, quick draw got a nerf. It no longer maxes out that handling stat at all times. If it did, it would definitely be the perk we would choose here. But full auto, guys, really, really nice here for just laying on the trigger. Something that I don't think mouse and keyboard players absolutely need, but for controller players, you'll definitely appreciate. Now, before we get into our next row, I do want to talk about a few things in regards to range and recoil. First up, arrowhead break seems like an obvious choice here. We're looking at a recoil direction of 64. You throw on arrowhead break, you're going to be sitting up there at about 94. Now, there are other perks there that can boost your recoil direction, including chamber compensator, which we actually use. That actually buffs your stability as well as your recoil direction. You've also got perks like extended barrel, which also increases that recoil direction as well as your range, although it does hurt that handling. However, you're rocking something like surplus, it'll counter that. But in terms of just the base recoil direction, it does have some slight drift there to the right. And you don't really start to take notice of it until multiple shots, right? You really start to see that deviation. Now, you would think throwing on a counterbalance mod would help this, right? Not necessarily. Even pointed out here by Destiny Item Manager, notice that the recoil direction has even more drift there to the right, despite increasing our recoil direction to 79. That's just the way the numbers work, fellas. Regardless, its base recoil direction with no counterbalance mod seems to be better than just slapping on a counterbalance mod. And I would only really overcommit here to raising your recoil direction if you have either arrowhead break or just a barrel perk that increases that recoil direction by +10. +10 will still keep it around that 74 mark, which means it'll actually be a little more vertical, but it will still have some slight drift there to the right. That's just the way recoil direction works in this game. But what I'm saying to you is this actually frees up our mod slot, which is different than Time-Worn Spire, or even the most recent pulse rifle, Jurassic Green. You 100% have to use a counterbalance mod there. So that's one pro about Darkest Before, that you don't need that. Honestly, similar to Grid Skipper in a lot of ways, as Grid Skipper also has 55 recoil direction. Now, range-wise, I actually have a roll on my own account. This is not a max range roll, but a well-rolled Darkest Before at about 59 range. We could, of course, squeeze that up into the 60s. However, even right here, we're still looking at about 35 meters to about 35.5 meters before we start to see damage fall off. And guys, this is really important on a rapid-fire pulse rifle because there's just a lot of action happening. You've got a lot of recoil going back and forth with every single burst. When you get outside of your optimal range, even if you are on target, you'll notice your bullets start to deviate. They'll just miss. And that's just because you're outside of that optimal range and it's just not connecting. Luckily for us here though, Darkest Before is able to reach at pretty decent ranges with the right rolls. Where weapons like Jurassic Green is able to catch up is due to things like rangefinder. Time-Worn Spire is of course superior in its range due to those zoom modifying scopes. And Grid Skipper, look, don't look down on Grid Skipper here, fellas. We're talking a base zoom of 18. That's actually one more than that of Darkest Before. So Grid Skipper actually has a little more reach. Now, the second roll we played with was very similar to the first roll, surplus, but instead of full auto in that final column, we went with Elemental Capacitor. Now, Elemental Capacitor has a variety of things that it can help you with, depending on the subclass that you're rocking. Solar increases that reload speed, Arc increases handling, Void increases stability, and Stasis actually moderately controls recoil as well as increasing movement speed while aiming down sight. This is a very underrated perk, especially for my Stasis users. We're talking a plus 20 there in our recoil direction, as well as the dueling capabilities being increased due to that increase in movement speed while aiming down sights. Now, I don't know how substantial that jump is when it comes to that strafe speed. I do know that this is a dueling weapon. Darkest Before is a dueling aggressive weapon. You want to get in the face of your enemies and just pepper them with shots. And quite frankly, Elemental Capacitor allows you to do that with more effectiveness. I actually really like this roll, guys. Now, I could have gone Void, right? I could have been like, yo, let's just max out stability here, raise that stability up, and get as much as we can. But really, I didn't need it. I had surplus already. And about the only thing that I was missing from this roll was high caliber rounds. Now, guys, this is the roll that I would actually suggest for my PC players. Don't do Arrowhead Break. You don't need it, especially if you're rocking Elemental Capacitor and you're rocking Stasis. Honestly, you could do Elemental Capacitor with that plus 20 in recoil direction in combination with Counterbalance. I know I just said don't rock Counterbalance, but at this point, the two of those together would actually increase your recoil direction up to 99. Damn near perfect, fellas. That in combination with High Cal, Surplus, this is a deadly, and I mean deadly dueling combo. I know there's a lot of people that love full auto, and I get it. I got my controller players. You guys love full auto. Hey, man, I'm not trying to take that away from you. All I'm saying is if you can get comfortable with that 540 rate of fire, and if you are a mouse and keyboard player, my suggestion is actually Elemental Capacitor and Surplus together with the Counterbalance mod for that easy vertical direction. Now, is Darkest Before the best PvP pulse rifle I have played with? Well, guys, there's a lot of different archetypes, right? Look, do I like Darkest Before? Yes. Does some of that come from the fact that I was in love with this weapon in year one? Absolutely. So I understand right now at this moment that I'm actually a little biased. I also know that you guys have been building this weapon up now for the past couple months, stating that it was literally the best weapon in the game. And I will say it is very, very good. But even amongst pulse rifle, Darkest Before has some competition. So I need us to just realign here real quick because I like this pulse rifle. I do. But you're not going to walk in there and just shred everything that walks in front of you unless they're potatoes. Because you've got other pulse rifles that are definitely meta. The Messenger, No Time to Explain. Vigilance Wing is starting to make a comeback. Legal Action. Nah, I don't know about Legal Action. I actually haven't even played with the new rolls. Some of you guys keep saying it's meta. We'll see in the next one. But that's just amongst pulse rifles. And I gotta say, at least for my playstyle, I do love the Messenger. Probably the most. Desperado is just so dang good. However, for these reviews, making comparisons to broad metas, even weapons outside of the direct archetype that the weapon is present in, is a little unnecessary. Because like me, I think a lot of you just want to know, is this the best weapon within that given archetype? And this is my personal opinion. Darkest Before is currently one of the best rapid fire pulse rifles and maybe even the best rapid fire pulse rifle out of all of them. Until Horus Lease gets reprise rolls. Look, that's all I'm gonna say here, guys. Is Darkest Before really good? Yes. Would I choose it over Grit Skipper? Maybe. I don't know. Grit Skipper's got some nasty rolls. I honestly think the weapon doesn't get enough credit. You've got Firmly Planted, Moving Target, Snapshot, Tunnel Vision, Multi-Kill Clip, and it's got good range. I'm kind of giving Darkest Before a slight edge due to its scope, because a lot of people just do not like Grit Skipper's box scope and its dueling capabilities. However, and I mean this, guys, if Horus Lease ever gets a refresh in its rolls, it will destroy every rapid fire pulse rifle in the game. It's the best in my opinion. Now, I'm also a sucker for thick red dots, and the red dot there on Horus Lease is super thick, which means tracking targets is pretty easy. But I also think the weapon overall is just really clean. But currently right now, I guess it's safe to say Darkest Before is the best rapid fire. Maybe one of the best. One of the best. I'm just gonna say one of the best. I don't even like saying it's the best, but it's definitely up there. Top three rapid fire pulse rifle in the game, and we'll leave it at that. Now, some other rolls on the weapon that are actually really good include Subsistence Rampage, One for All Overflow, or One for All Subsistence, Surplus, One for All. You can even get a Wellspring roll. There's some other combinations that make it pretty nasty inside of PvE. And before someone asks why not bring Rampage inside of Crucible, you 100% can do that. What we were trying to do with today's rolls was lean in to the weapon's already decent time to kill value of 0.8 and just find ways to make the weapon more lethal in 1v1 scenarios. Rampage is obviously nasty when it comes to chaining kills, even here on Darkest Before. And I would say Rampage Surplus or even Rampage Slide Shot could be an option for you. And speaking of Slide Shot, don't overlook it. I'm kind of torn between both Surplus and Slide Shot. Slide Shot is just so dang good in and out of engagements, and we actually had a Slide Shot One for All roll that actually worked pretty well inside of 6v6. Yeah, One for All. I know. It's a perk that a lot of us think of as only a PvE perk, but it was actually doing all right. But in terms of the roll that really is going to be the best here, I honestly think, guys, since the TWAB yesterday revealed information about the full auto mod, because again, it will be a mod that you can apply to any of your weapons to turn it into a full auto weapon. With that being the case, I think Elemental Capacitor is such a good dueling perk or one of the damage perks. So keep that in mind. I know that right now full auto is a perk that a lot of console players are seeking out on Darkest Before. However, with that full auto mod coming, this really opens up that slot there for other perks. So keep that in mind, guys. Whatever Darkest Befores you're getting, there will be a mod that will allow you to have full auto on that weapon. So consider some of those other traits. So guys, try it out for yourselves. I know I'm being kind of harsh here about Darkest Before. It is a very good weapon. I would still prefer Horus Lease and some reprise rolls, but it is what it is. Regardless, it is a great weapon, and it's only going to get better this time next month. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.